I am so excited to welcome my dear friend and longtime client, Laura Belgray. I've had the honor of doing two websites now and multiple products and things, helping Laura with her design aspects. One of my greatest joys and a hack, if you're a service provider, I learn a lot by putting together other people's products. So with Laura, we actually developed the first, I think I convinced you to actually make your first digital product, right? Wasn't
You
one of them?
did. You
Yeah.
you said like there's this thing called Gumroad. Why don't you make something and we can upload it and then you can sell it really easily.
And here we are, millions
And
and
here we
millions of
are.
dollars later.
Yes.
Yes. So, when Laura reached out to me the other week and I said, hey, can we have a little conversation about how to be less boring? Because this is something I know I struggle with. I hate posting on social. I know I need to do more. It just drives me nuts. I love to lurk. I'm a big lurker. I will read threads. I will read other people's posts. I will do all the things. I don't want to post myself. But what I made a promise to myself years ago is that I would at least write an email at least a couple times a month, if not every Friday. And so Laura's been responsible for me actually committing to that. She's been a cheerleader, but also has given me a lot of frameworks to work with. So I wanted to just share her brain with you today about how we can write better emails, better copy. And also, this applies to other stuff that you're doing too. So if you're making sales pages or if you're doing pitches, all of these kind of techniques and tools can be applied to other things. And so even for those of us who are service providers or we work in quote unquote more professional fields, where we don't talk about girth, as Laura had a great anecdote earlier about a husband that said something in the background. I too have had a husband that says stuff in the background inadvertently. So, having the ability to not be boring and be memorable, I think is the key, especially now when it's not this, it's that, right? When it's all these things that we just see and we're inundated with AI slop. How can we stand out? So, Laura, thank you so much for chatting with my folks today and to everyone who watches on the replay as well. So, welcome.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing me so proud when you credit me for inspiring you to write these incredible emails that people love. And I save them. I sometimes use them as examples when I teach how to write great emails. So,
Oh, see, and I'll tell you, I had an email last week from someone that just like put me in a tizzy because people are really upset and people are really on edge for a variety
mm,
of reasons, which we won't get in. We got hours for that.
yeah.
People are on edge. And, sometimes, Thursday or Wednesday comes around, I'm like, "Ah, I just don't know if I can feel like writing an email." And I have to remember I always try to have like a nugget or something that is going to help somebody. And I have to remember, like, Laura's been a great cheerleader for that, where sometimes I'm like, why am I even doing this sometimes? Because especially if someone's got a negative Nelly kind of aspect to them, and you're just like, why am I doing this if I'm getting negative feedback? So, Laura, maybe we start there is like,
Yeah.
what's your motivation besides money and the obvious things? Like, what motivates you, especially when you're getting like negative pushback on stuff?
Yeah. What motivates me to keep going, because sometimes it is like, oh, God, business is relentless. And do I really want to keep doing this? Especially when I think about the obligation part of it and
Mm.
and I have to do this because this is how I make money. Then I think about people who save my emails, who tell me they inspire them to be more themselves, that they find them helpful, that they find them inspiring, that they love my writing. And that's the whole reason I started doing it in the first place was I want to find a way to write what I want to write and somehow get paid for that.
Mm, I
And
love that.
so come back to that. I'm like, it's so worth it. I really enjoy I just have to make sure that I enjoy what I'm writing and that I'm not writing something that's like, ugh, this is bad, or just I don't want to write about this,
Hmm.
but I have to. I don't like if I start feeling that way, then I'm like scrap it, start a new email.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I run into this a lot. So I save little nuggets. So I don't usually write my emails all in one
Yeah.
go. I always have these little nuggets of story. So I always have like 10 little notes started with like a little something or other. And I know last week I was really struggling and I scrapped a whole thing. Like I'd spent like an hour and a half on something and I'm like, I just hate it. I just hate it. And I'm like, if I feel like it's drudgery, I just start over. And so
Yeah.
like that permission to just scrap it is really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the word permission is key too.
Mm.
Just not in terms of what I just said, but in when I write my emails, like I like for my writing to give people permission, or
Mm.
something I said in the email to give somebody permission
Mm.
to, whether it's to say F it, or to write the way they want to write, or say something that they have been afraid to say,
Mhm.
or just being an example of something that they want to do. And I think that your emails, I'm sure that they do that also.
Mm.
People are like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. Like make digital discussions, or like web design, or whatever you're talking about. Like, I didn't know you could make that personal and fun.
Yeah. I think you're the one who taught me. I remember when I very first started, I started writing my newsletter maybe like 2014, 2015. I always tell people it's the one thing I really wish I would have started earlier. Because as a service provider, and I'm still a service provider, still the majority of my work. As a service provider, I was like, I'm all like, word of mouth and referrals. And like, why do I even need to do this? And like, when I first started writing, I come from an academic background. Like I was supposed to be a museum archivist. Like that was my goal. So like I love a footnote. I love like tiny little print at the end of stuff. Like that shows me like, oh, it's real. It's like, really methodical and thought out. Like Heather Cox Richardson, I live for that stuff. I'm like, I
Yeah.
want all the citations, right? So, when I first started writing, I wrote like that. And I'm like, God, I'm getting bored. And if I'm bored, I know everybody else is going to be bored. So you gave me that permission to like actually have fun and tell stories. And so when I did that reframe of like, oh, I can tell a story, and then the harder part for me is always like doing the segue. So that kind of like getting that framework to learn how to do that stuff, and it's really a muscle. Like I find like the more that
Yeah.
you do it, the better it gets, and the easier it just you start to like have your own tone and all your own kind of like flavor. That's been really really helpful. So I
Yeah.
would love to know, like, let's just get into like boring stuff. Like, what makes
Yeah.
an email boring to you?
Uh, the first thing that makes it boring is if it is formal, if it's written in a
Mm.
quote unquote professional tone, like, hello and good afternoon. I currently have several things on offer, like several propositions, just that. Yeah, that buttoned up, wordy,
Yeah.
stiff, formal kind of writing is total turnoff. And I think people think they need to do that in order to sound professional. Like this is a professional email. And
Mm.
there are some people who'll come at me and be like, you sure don't sound professional. I wish you wouldn't use this kind of language in a professional email. I'm like, if I'm getting paid for it, then it is professional. If I like, I decide what's professional, and this is how I get paid, so it's professional. It's as professional as it needs to be. So that, like, trying to sound professional
Hmm.
or academic, any kind of
Hmm.
academic language, or um, corporate kind of speak,
Hmm.
very boring. But also, even if it's conversational, if it is generic and devoid of actual concrete details, then
Mm.
that's really boring.
Mm.
Um, just for instance, you'll get something that's like, hey, Michelle, as women, we often find ourselves putting ourselves last and putting everybody else first. I always say you have to put your own oxygen mask on first.
Ugh.
But if you're not prioritizing yourself, that ends today because I'm pleased to introduce my membership, blah, blah, blah. Like just that kind of cliched, boring, you know,
Mm.
generic language that anyone could say, that could come from anybody, as opposed to telling a little story about how very last you put yourself, and like how you used to cook yourself dinner, but now you find yourself eating scraps of chicken nuggets, or whatever your kids leave over on the plate. That's like, those details are what are relatable. The more
Mm.
specific you are, the more universal. So it's like, it's that kind of stuff, that kind of storytelling
Yeah.
that's original. That's what grabs.
So it's not about changing the concept. It's so funny you even mentioned like that whole thing about you putting yourself last and the food thing. a nutrition coach I follow actually had a whole thing about eating, stop eating standing up over the sink, and stop eating the cheese shreds over the sink. And I'm like, oh my God, that's something I do. Like, when you're in a rush
Right.
and you eat over the sink, like, and I'm like, that
Yes.
immediately caught me because it's not like you have to come up with a whole new concept of what you're talking
No,
about. It's just the way that you frame it and you kind of you can visualize it. You're like, oh yeah, I do eat the meatballs straight out of the fridge while I'm like deciding what to make for dinner. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And her specificity there, like the cheese shreds over the sink, if that's
Yeah.
what she said, you
Yeah.
weren't like, well, I eat meatballs, so that's a little too specific.
Yeah.
I eat meatballs out of the fridge, not cheese shred. So you can't be afraid to use your absolute most specific details
Yeah.
for fear of people saying, well, that doesn't apply to me. Well, I don't do that
Mm.
exactly.
To be fair, I
It's
do also
more
eat the cheese shreds. So
cheese
just so we're
shreds over
clear,
the
just
sink.
so we're
Yeah.
clear, they have to be the four state cheddar. But yes, I do. So, that makes me go to the next question. Like, would you even make it that far in the email if you started reading that? Because what makes you skip, like, if you've gotten to open the email, which that's the first hurdle, right, is getting
Yeah.
past the subject line. But what makes you skip an email? And along with that, what makes you unsubscribe?
Well, what makes me skip an email is, always a boring subject line that looks like it's, first of all, if it's in, not always, but often if it's in title case, meaning the first
Mm,
letter of each word is capitalized, and then it's something really generic or obvious,
mm,
like bad news, New Year's resolutions don't work. And then in the preview text, but here's what to do instead. It's
mhm,
like, how many times am I going to hear this?
mhm,
Like, the same tip that everybody gives. So that will make me skip it. Absolutely. If it's like,
mhm,
yeah, I already know the answer to that. Or I've already heard this a million times.
mhm,
Um, I give an example when I teach this in my upcoming webinar. I think I might not do this anymore, but I've often given the example of like kind of solving a mystery in in the subject line when people think they're evoking curiosity, and they'll
mhm,
be like, "Why bananas have the most potassium?" It's like, I don't care. It's way better would be like, what's long and yellow and stops leg cramps at night.
mm, mhm.
That's
Yeah.
like even if I know the answer, I'm still going to click that open to satisfy my curiosity or see if I'm right.
Do you, along with subject lines, this is actually, I struggle the most with subject lines because a lot of times I treat it as like a throwaway thing. Because I find as much as I play with it, I still get roughly around the same open rate. And that's
Yeah,
probably because I've trained my audience. But
right.
how much do you, I know you've got a whole subject line, like, freebie thing and also paid stuff, but how much do you sweat the subject line?
I don't sweat it, but I do put thought into it.
Mm-hmm.
Just and sometimes I'll do a split test. I'll often do a split test. If I have
Mm-hmm.
two different ones that I can't decide between, I just split them.
Mm-hmm.
But I always want to make it intriguing. And I know that I'm going to get roughly the same number
Mm-hmm.
of opens no matter what, because I've trained my audience like you. And at this point, it's about the sender name,
Yeah.
at least for those who've been around. But even so, like if I'm going through my inbox and I see something from somebody whose emails I love, like say I see yours,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really busy, I might be like, open that. Okay, I'll open that later. It's from Michelle.
Yeah.
But when it's like a really good one, I'm like, I got to read that now. Like,
Mm.
okay, I'll procrastinate and read that now.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'll open it faster if it's really extra good. But
Okay.
still, like, it's hard to figure out if, A is going to be better than B.
Mm-hmm.
But just trying to give it some element of curiosity, of tension, some conflict in it.
Mm.
Um, and another thing that will make me skip it, though not delete necessarily. I mean, skip it and delete, though not necessarily unsubscribe,
Mm.
if the email starts with what time of year it is.
Oh,
Like,
interesting.
hey, can you believe it's already mid-June? Like,
Ugh.
Yeah, I can.
I love Gina Marie's like giving the
Gina
third.
Marie is my kind of person.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Like, yeah, don't pander to. I think I've got a pretty educated audience. Like
Right,
my readers are pretty darn educated. And so like I think there's also a thing of like, don't treat us like we're dumb. If
right.
we've granted space in your inbox. By the way, my new metric is going to be I want Laura to open my email immediately. So that's going to be I'm going to focus more on my subject lines. But yeah, I do find that too. It's just I find when they're lazy, like it's interesting when for me it's a lot of formatting issues that'll make me either delete or unsubscribe. Like if the formatting, if it's really big font, or if it's spaced weird, it shows me that you didn't test stuff, or that
Yeah,
I feel really bad. I subscribe to a couple friends' newsletters, and I don't want to unsubscribe because I don't want them to
I
feel bad.
know.
This is a whole
I
thing,
know.
right?
I know.
That we do this, and one of them, the logo from their email takes up so much space that if you're on a phone, you've got to scroll. Make sure you test your stuff because that is one thing that'll make me definitely either delete it or, sometimes silo my friends' emails because
Yes.
I feel like I don't want to unsubscribe and make them feel bad. But yeah, for me,
Same.
that's like a big one is the formatting. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think that might make me unsubscribe. What would make me unsubscribe is AI writing. Now, I
Mm.
see it so much, and the second I see it, I'm like, you're
Yeah.
done. You're dead to me.
Yeah.
I can't read this. Like, I just can't
I,
read another of these.
I will say I don't use AI to write my newsletter. However, I will sometimes use it to help. Because I struggle with subject lines. I will
Oh,
ask it to be like, "Hey, can you write me?" And I've kind of trained mine to kind of have my. It never will totally replace you. I will also use it to just
right.
double check my grammar. It's like,
Well, same. I use AI for every single email, by the way. I feed it like
ah,
I've created an editor for myself with all the rules, like you're not allowed to use any of these AI tells. Do not be
ah,
you, and don't try to be me either. I say like go
yeah.
through this, tell me where I'm repeating words unnecessarily, because sometimes I'll find like, three buts in a row, like in one
Mm,
paragraph
hmm.
or some other word. And so I like it to catch those or tell me where I can shorten something or find errors, find typos, extra
Ah,
spaces, whatever.
hmm,
So it gives me numbered edits. And then
hmm.
sometimes I'll say, what do you think for a subject line? And it'll give me some. And I'm like, those are ridiculous. I want something that pulls from the email that's not that doesn't sound totally stupid or random. It has to have
Hmm,
some pull to it,
hmm.
and it can't be about somebody they don't care about. It'll be like I wrote an email about my friend Dana, just that she was asking somebody who we ran into in the parking lot at the beach about their GLP-1, and the person was shocked, and Dana's like, "What?" She's like, "Everybody talks about this. Everyone's doing it." She showed her own bruise. So the email was just about that, about her
Yeah.
being herself. And it suggested all these subject lines like, Dana actually said this. I'm like, they don't know who Dana is.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say Dana actually said this
Yeah.
or Dana in the parking lot. No,
Yeah.
it's not about that. So, but I did change. I did go with My friend actually said this to someone's face.
Oh, but that's more interesting because now you're like, you want to be nosy. Yeah.
Right, right, exactly.
So the
And it's
subject
not.
line should be intriguing.
It
That's a
should
good
be
thing to
intriguing.
remember. Yeah.
It should be intriguing and show that there's some story in there. There's some tension. There's some conflict.
Hmm.
This is about something that you're going to want to
Hmm.
read. But if it uses like names
Hmm.
or words that the reader doesn't has no familiarity with, it's
Mm.
an immediate like,
Yeah.
even if they're not thinking about it.
It's what's interesting is in the last few months I've been helping a couple other folks write their emails and this has been I'm not a copywriter. I've never called myself a writer and trying to change my tone, it's hard because like I find that my own
Mm.
voice keeps coming out
Hmm.
and then I'm trying to like I'm trying like my sign off and then they wanted to use my sign off and I'm like I got really protective because I always say, you've got this
Yeah. Oh no.
And then
Mm-mm.
they
That's
wanted to use
yours.
my sign. I'm like, no, that's what
No.
I use. And I'm like, well, I don't really own it. But like, that's what's interesting too, when you start writing so much for yourself is like, you start to
Yeah.
get these patterns and you evolve these things. And I don't know. I don't know how copywriters do it. I mean, I can design for other people, but writing for other people is that's a tough nugget. I'm curious, like, what are some maybe fast fixes to make emails more fun? So obviously we've got like our little stories and intriguing, subject lines. What are some other like fast fixes that we could maybe implement?
Yeah. Go through it, and in any place where you're being generic,
Mm,
think, how can I paint a picture here? Instead of saying, you know, um, I was in a lousy mood last week, and um, the mood just permeated the, the house and my work and all that. Maybe like, could you be more specific there and say, last week, I had this to do, and all I wanted to do was um, catastrophize and watch Netflix, or like,
mm, yeah,
like picture like 10 different ways I was going to die. I was sure I was going to die, whatever. Like, make it that specific,
mm,
and or say like, when I served my family dinner, I slammed the plate on the table instead of
mm,
placing it,
hmm,
and well, one of them broke. Like, so what are like I call it the Steven Spielberg test. How,
mm,
if you handed this to a director, how
mm.
would they direct the scene?
Oh, that's so interesting. A- along with that, I, I do find, I mean, I'm baby Gen X, right? So I do find that younger generations tend to share a lot more. Do you find there's a point where people are sharing too much and that takes away from what they're actually trying to do in the email?
Um, it depends on what they're talking about, like what their field is, what their topic
Mm,
is, and who they're writing to.
hmm,
Like, if you were to write to your list randomly about your digestion,
hmm.
and it had no connection, you know, and it had no connection to what you were talking
Yeah,
about. I mean, if it went somewhere, okay, maybe. But
maybe.
there are certain things like, your bowel movements that we don't want to hear about necessarily, unless that is your field, unless you're a functional nutritionist or something like that,
True. Although I feel
gut
like I just
health
saw the poop emoji in one of
specialist.
your subject lines. Did I not
Oh
see it?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I don't
yeah.
mind a poop emoji or a barf emoji.
I-
But it's but
yeah,
it's not but it wasn't about poop. It was
yeah,
probably about me saying like, AI is crap or
yeah.
something like that.
Um, so, that makes me think too, because I know you sometimes use emojis and things. How often do you change up like the style of your emails? Meaning like, how long it is, maybe the messaging, even the look. Do you do a lot of changes or do you find
Mm.
you're like pretty much doing the same thing every time?
Yeah, I don't consciously do a lot of changes.
Mhm.
The one thing I try to do once in a while, I succeed at it, is write a short email.
Mm,
Nobody is expecting a really short email from me. So sometimes during a launch, like one of the last ones will be like, wow, you're really holding out to the last minute, huh? Here's your link. Um, like, go get it before it's gone.
yeah.
But I think that's the only thing. I mean, somebody said to me that my style has changed recently, feels different, and
Hmm.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know in what way. I mean, our
Mm,
writing evolves over time, but I don't stylistically try to change them up. I always want
yeah.
to sound like me, and
And you don't really repeat yourself. Like, you don't really recycle. I know you do for launches, maybe
do.
some of it, but
Yeah.
do you like in your general cadence, how much do you find that you're pulling from old stuff?
Uh, I would say rarely, but I'm not against pulling from old stuff. I mean, there
Hmm.
was one summer when I was working on my book, or pretending to work on my book. I, I had all that time blocked out, and I was like, I'm just gonna recycle emails for,
Hmm.
all of July. And I did. And there are so many good ones from the past that, why use those just once? And I
Mm,
feel like, especially if I don't remember writing it, then they're not going to remember reading it.
mm,
And if
mhm.
they do remember reading it, That's a
Yeah.
luxury problem.
Yeah.
Uh, I do try to vary up the subject lines if I'm recycling something.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll use the same ones because I'm like, oh, that's the bet. No subject line's going to beat that.
Yeah.
But often I'll use a new subject line and then people really won't remember it. They might be
Mm.
like, this feels familiar. Even if they recognize the subject line, sometimes they'll open it thinking, like, I remember getting this in my inbox, but I forget what it was about.
Yeah.
And they'll open it and reread it.
I always tell people like I don't worry about repeating. Like I have a client where I again hate making social media graphics, but I will do it as part of like projects and stuff. And I'm like, we can totally repeat like these things that you launched 3 months ago because no one goes back
Yeah.
and scrolls. Like,
No,
and if they do, they're
no.
probably a stalker, which that's a whole other
Yes.
thing. But
Right.
we can repeat ourselves. And I'm actually really excited. I don't know if any of you folks are on Kit, formerly ConvertKit, they just released their MCP. So that's the way to connect to Claude. I'm just setting this up, by the way. So it's a way that we can actually use Claude and interact with Kit to look at our old emails, look at our analytics, actually recycle some of our stuff or pull our best in. I used to have to do this manually, or I had like
Yeah.
ways of doing this. So I'm actually really excited about some of these ways to see like, well, hey, what really worked back then? And how can we repurpose some of this stuff? Because especially for launches, I will recycle some stuff. I do the same thing. Usually, because if it's been more than a couple of years, my writing I think is better, and
Yeah.
so especially I know if I pull from pre-COVID time, I'm like.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, who was this person? Like, do you look back? Is there stuff that you wrote at the beginning that you're like, you cringe about now? And you're like, how did that ever work?
Not really. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, that's wow, that was pretty good. Maybe I don't know if I'm as good as I used to be. Like I was so free back then. But I do look back and sometimes see a lot of things that could have been more economical.
Mm,
And where I get really wordy or have so many asides that it's like, oh
mhm,
my God, is she ever going to get to the point?
mm.
It's like, do you know that Fred Armisen character on SNL? Who I forget his name. He's like he would go on Weekend Update and he never got to the point. He was like, okay, I'm just going to say this, not at all a criticism. The thing about you, and please do not take this the wrong way, but if you ask me what happened last week, and I don't mean just what happened last week, but like he never, ever, ever gets to the point.
Yeah.
And so some of them kind of feel like that.
Yeah.
And so now I try to tighten that up. Often I'll cut,
Mm,
if I'm recycling something from a while back, I'll cut the first paragraph. I often
mm.
find that that wasn't necessary. There's throat clearing in there,
You-
and tighter
uh,
is better.
that reminds me, I was listening to so I love Conan O'Brien. I listen to his podcast. I'll listen to Amy Poehler's podcast, right?
Hmm.
Conan was talking to some other late night person. I couldn't remember about it. And they were talking about the attention span that people have now.
Yeah.
And, he was referencing James Baldwin. His interview, I think, was who was the famous Dick Cavett, right? I think there
Oh
was a
yeah.
James Baldwin
Yeah.
Dick Cavett thing. And it
Hmm.
was like you could have had like a 90-minute conversation,
Yeah.
deep dive, into, politics and things. These days, they would probably require James Baldwin to do some sort of trick to keep people engaged for the 15
Yes.
seconds to get to the next clip. And back then, you could have had like a 90-minute conversation. And so I do find like the economics of words, it
Yeah.
sucks. But we do have to ruthlessly cut. Like Anne Hanley's really good about like I'm always in my head when I'm reading her stuff too about like, ooh, how can I be more economical about like
Yeah.
what I'm writing? Because again, I'm always like, am I dragging this on? Like, I'll write it, I'll sit with it, I'll go back and shop it. I'll be like, do I actually need this? This sentence isn't helping anything. So I find
Yeah.
myself doing that a lot more, whereas maybe a few years ago I would have let it slide. Um,
Right.
and I will also say too, a lot of people don't realize if your email is too long, it will get clipped. So clipping, we've probably seen this, especially it happens with sales emails. I've seen this a lot more with e-commerce brands that don't do a lot of testing. Gmail, if your email is over a certain size, both length and actual like file size, this is why you don't want to use huge graphics as well. It will clip your email, meaning like you have to click another link to view the entire message, and nobody does that. So
Oh,
we have to
didn't
be,
know that.
yeah, no, it is an actual real thing. So if you've got a very long email, And I've got a couple clients that, I want to post every event. I want to do all the things. And I'm like, we can't do that in an email. We need to drive them to go
Right.
somewhere. So we actually need to be economical in our words. Listen, 1,000 words, whatever, you're going to be fine. But I
Yeah.
also caught this with Substack. People aren't aware this with really long Substack articles do the same thing. So that's why you want to be economical and lead either to the next email or next sequence or whatever else. So it's another thing to test that a lot of people aren't aware about. So it's kind of an interesting,
Yeah.
like technical thing. So yeah, like I know the tech stuff is always fun. People are always like, how did you discover this? I'm like, not in a fun way is usually is
Right.
usually what happens. You've read so many thousands of emails. Like, is there something that makes you immediately know this person's going to be a fun read? This is someone I want to pay attention to.
It's usually the first line.
Oh, wow.
Like if that email starts with a bang,
Mm.
and trying to think of an example right now, nothing's coming to mind, but just sometimes it starts with a line that's like, I need to read this story.
Mm.
Um, like, I don't know if it started with, when I was 14 and got arrested outside Studio 54, I knew it was going to be blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah.
those first few words. Not every story is going to be like that, but you can
Yeah.
find the tension in a story
Mm.
and like this is where it should start. And often I'll read through emails that have a great story in them.
Mm.
And sometimes often the story will start a couple of times, or they'll wind up to the story, give an introductory paragraph, and I'm like, halfway down the page, I'm like, this is where your story starts. This is where your
Mm.
email starts,
Yeah.
right
So
here.
maybe cut to the chase faster. Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you find, and again, some of this is changing now with how Gmail interprets email, but like, do you find yourself writing a different preview line versus the different first line of your
Yeah.
email?
Yes. Not always, but most of the time, especially if I'm in a launch,
Mm.
because, well, first of all, one thing that I see people do all the time is they will write a subject line, and then the first line of their email is basically says the same thing as the subject
Mm.
line. So you get your subject line repeating in the preview text,
Mm.
and that immediately screams email,
Yeah.
or
Lazy.
newsletter. It
Yeah.
Yes, it looks lazy, but it also looks like, oh, this is not from a person
Mm.
because it's got a title in it that repeats.
Yeah.
So I make sure that that doesn't happen. And sometimes that's valuable real estate, that preview
Mm.
text line. So if there's something that I don't say in the subject line, because I want the subject line to be less about business and housekeeping,
Hmm.
but I need them to know, like, this bonus ends tonight, I will
Hmm.
put that in the preview text.
Mm. Oh, that's good to know. Yeah. So especially pay attention to that. Okay. So far, tension, subject line, pay attention to the preview text. Yeah.
Yeah.
And cut ruthlessly.
Cut ruthlessly.
Um, I'm curious. I mean, and then you've kind of answered this a little bit. Like you've sent, I don't even know, you probably several million emails at this point, like based on
Yeah, oh yeah.
numbers, like at this point, like legit to like thousands, to thousands of
Right.
people. After sending so many emails, can you kind of predict the response that you're going to get? And by that, I mean open rate, sales, replies. Like if you're writing a particular email and you're like, oh, this one's going to hit, like, are you surprised at this point by a reaction to an email?
I'm not surprised by a reaction. Usually I'm like, yeah, I was hoping that would hit. I am surprised when there's a lack of one. And I'm like,
Mm,
come on, people. Like that was
mm.
so good. Like, how are you not responding to that? But yeah, so I always hope that it's gonna be get a lot of replies.
Hmm.
And usually the ones that get the most replies are when I'm ranting about something or somebody,
Yeah.
or showcasing a negative reply to my emails, like telling me
Oh, yeah.
that I suck. And those get the most replies, and
Yeah.
people love it. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I wasn't fishing, I swear, but thank you.
I will say people will come to your defense. I remember I had somebody, I love a PS, right?
Yeah.
And anybody's on my list knows I always have a PS, usually two or three. And I remember I had one email where some dude, of course it was a dude,
Of
came
course.
after me for like, you really need to not do this. And so
Right.
I think I blocked him. Because at this point, I have like a zero tolerance policy. If you've never purchased something and I don't know you personally or we haven't worked together, you're off my list. So
Yep.
I don't tolerate
Love
at
it.
this point. I'm like, I do not have time like for negative
Bullshit.
Nellies in my life.
No.
So that's kind of my personal rule. And some people will be like, how can you do? I'm like, you know what? It's my space. It's my inbox too, is the way that I look at it because
Yep.
it's just me here. Like I don't have like a
Right.
team of minions. I don't have like anybody protecting me. I definitely have work on teams where there are like layers to protect people, but listen,
Right.
we're still people at the end of the day. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes people don't remember that.
No.
That like even those emails you get from Sephora, somebody makes those, you know?
Right.
So plus I like to be nice to bots. So it's you just never know what's going to happen here. So
Right.
so I think that's really interesting of like knowing how someone's going to respond. And also people do like to know when something doesn't work out. Um, it's funny, my husband used to host an event called F Up Nights, and I won't say the word here because
Oh
we're
yeah.
recording. And it was you got 10 minutes to talk about a failure with no redemption, no hero's journey. And so I don't always think that you need a redemption story too. It's like sometimes stuff
No.
just doesn't work out, you know? Sometimes,
Right.
client relationships or whatever, sometimes it just sucks. And so I think it's kind of cool to share that sometimes of like, I'm still standing. I may not be happy right now, but I'm still standing. So um, I think I've got my questions done here. So I'd like to open it up to the crew here.
What would be a good strategy for getting started in terms of what should you write first? What should you send them? I would map out, like, first of all, make yourself, like, do a brain dump. Open a Google Doc, whatever you use, a brain dump of all the tips that you already know you want to share. And pull out one of those that lights you up the most, where you have something to say about it. Like maybe a story that illustrates it. Doesn't have to be a long story, but just how you discovered this or what it transformed in your life or what the problem was that it solved, something relatable. And try writing just, it doesn't have to be a long email. Just try writing that, and you don't have to every time like name the newsletter, say this is the newsletter where I share, you can do that at the bottom. So especially if you're doing it once a month, at the bottom you could say, like, if you forget why you're getting this in your inbox, you probably signed up this way, and every month I share a tip for, you can do that, but you don't have to introduce yourself every time at the top. And just like start there with that first tip. And if you are game to write a few, because usually writing creates more ideas. The more you write, the more you write. So if writing one sparks an idea for the next one, write that next one right away. Like
Mm.
write it while it's fresh in your mind. And I do recommend using some sort of, I use a Google Doc. I can actually share what I use. All right, so this is a doc that my team fills in, but if I were doing it myself, I would fill it in. It's not that hard. For every day that I'm going to send an email, like they will create a version of this for each month. So they'll fill in the dates. I normally do them 3 days a week. So they'll do, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and fill in the dates. And then below each one of these, I start writing the email. I'll compose it right here under, hey, first name, and then usually the subject line comes last because I don't necessarily know what I'm going to write until I start writing it, and then I pull from there, like what'll be a good subject line. I play around with it. Sometimes I'll write a couple in that field and decide between them, or make a split test, and then I figure out what preview text I need, and that's how it gets down on paper, in an organized way, and you can scroll through them rather than just composing each one in your email platform individually. I find this way easier so that they are organized and I can see what I wrote last time without looking it up in that email provider, if that makes sense.
Mm. I will tell you, I do it completely differently, but she writes a lot more than I do. So I have, I use Evernote. I still use Evernote. And
Hmm.
so I have a whole folder of email ideas. And then in my weekly to-do list, I just have, upcoming new dates because I try to hit every Friday. Upcoming dates, I have like an idea of what I'm going to write about. And so then I link it to the note where I've actually written the email. So, but I also don't have a team who has got to implement for me. So I think when you've got a team, you have to have a system where it makes sense. And like when I'm working with other people and doing their emails, I'm in Google Docs, copying, pasting, moving stuff to Kit, testing, all
Yeah.
those things. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yes. And but then also like even if I weren't if even when I was composing it right into Kit, we
Hmm.
started transferring those to the Google Doc
Yeah.
because so that I have records of everything I've sent. And in case I ever switch platforms, which I
Yeah.
have done, then I
Yes.
still have the original emails accessible by a link.
Um, I will advise never ever ever write directly in your email platform for exactly that reason because if you lose Wi-Fi, you lose power or whatever, you're going to lose your email. Here's one really cool thing that's really cool about AI at this point is that if there's what we call an API, so that's basically it allows us to connect a tool to another tool. I went back with a client who's been writing emails since like 2014, and I had Claude pull every email from like 2020 or from like 2020 on and put it all in a Google Doc so that then we could mine that for additional content. So even if
Yeah.
you have stuff in the past, you could still use the tools now and pull past content and
Yeah.
pull it for ideas, pull it for content. Because if you have been writing, or if you do this for other people, there's ways to mine that content for the future. So yeah, I actually pulled one client's where it was a lot of date-based stuff. So I had it exclude any date-based stuff, pull. She always wrote like an intro, like welcoming message. And I'm like, a lot of that's timeless stuff. I want to pull that. And now we can use it for social. We can use it for new newsletters, maybe make a new download out of it, something like that. So this is where I get excited about AI is some of that stuff. It's not just to write
Yes.
for it. It's actually to like be a second or third brain at this point, which is where it gets exciting. So I just want to thank Laura for spending time with us today and answering all our unboring questions, getting us unboring basically. All of Laura's courses are great. What's nice is they're really evergreen. So you know, in my world, everything is like, oh, here's how this thing works today. The good thing about Laura's stuff is that it always works. It's not reliant on technical proficiency, which is always nice. They're
Ew.
not on our email list. Go to talkingshrimp.com. There's a lot of great stuff there. She does send a lot of emails and they're all great. I keep a whole folder myself of stuff. I'm like, oh, that was really smart. You'll pick up some things. Like this is, I personally sign up for people's emails to learn stuff. And sometimes I buy and it's I always learn from Laura. I'm like, oh, this is interesting, what's she doing now? And so I love to peek behind the curtain, so I really appreciate you sharing some of your stuff with us today. I'm definitely going to pay more attention to my subject lines now. Oh, that was I needed to hear that. I needed to
Yours were
hear that.
good. Yours were good.
Oh,
So
it
maybe
feels
you
like
just
painful.
naturally are.
It's like one of
Yeah,
those
you
things.
don't have to put that much pressure on yourself, but like step back and say, like, do I want to open this? That's really the question.
It's a good thing. It's like when you look in the mirror before you leave the house, like, should I take one thing
Exactly.
off? Do I really want to be
Right.
outside photographed in this? Yeah. So
Right.
it'll be the same thing. Like, will I be embarrassed if somebody else like finds that subject line? So yeah. So all right, Laura. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining us
Thanks,
today.
everyone.